Hello, this is Dave, W7UUU at the Radio Club at Tacoma, and today we're talking with Mike and how he got started in radio and got involved with the Radio Club at Tacoma. So Mike, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, my name is Mike Isakson. My call sign is Whiskey 7, X-Ray Hotel. I joined the club in 2014. I wasn't the first ham radio operator in my family. My grandfather, Carl Isakson, I brought a picture of him. This is my grandfather at his station. In 1957, March 13th, he became a member of the Radio Club at Tacoma and was one of the first people to get a logger certificate here at the club. So went back a long, long time for an affiliation with the club. When I was young, we got to go up to his shack. We'd see him do CW, do some sideband, look at his big map on the wall of his room that had push pins galore in this thing with all the contacts that he made around the world. And being young, 8 through 13, I'd go up and see these things. At one point, I said, Gramps, it would be really interesting to know a little bit more about this, and with the hopes that maybe he'd share that with me. Instead, he took this key and he poked it in my face and says, learn this, maybe we'll talk about it. And of course, that put me off. As a young guy, I was really put off by that. That wasn't the reaction that I was hoping to have. And so wasn't involved with radio at all. But years later, out at the Puyallup Fair, our local Western Washington State Fair in Puyallup, I was going through a room and I ran across a gentleman from the Radio Club at Tacoma and his wife, John Clark and Connie. And I would walk by their booth literally every year. First day of the fair, I'd go by their booth. John would just be so greeting. Connie was so nice. They'd share about the Radio Club of Tacoma. And I kept thinking about Gramps. And every time I did, I thought about that key. And I went, arr. And I kind of said, no, I'm not going to do that thing. But after about 4 years, struck up a little bit longer conversation with John. And I thought, okay. And he says, you can go get some testing at the club. And just reach out and talk to Steve Morton. And he'll get you into a tech class. And you can find out what it's all about. And so I finally relented and said, okay, I'm going to do that. So in 2014, I contacted Steve, took his class. And of course, while we're taking the class, he says, what's going to happen? If you pass your tech, you're going to have to take your general class as well. Well, I had a little bit of time off from work. And so I'm studying for the tech class. I'm studying for the general class. I come in that following week following the class, took my licenses, passed both, and joined the Radio Club. So that was kind of an interesting journey from early grandpa having that whole thing and not wanting to be involved. But I came across people in the club that were very inviting and friendly, at least initially, and got my license and joined the club, but found that, it wasn't as friendly as John was, that the club wasn't as open. I think they were waiting to see whether or not you were going to stick around.
Could be.
To see whether or not they were like, okay, I can invest a little bit of time in this guy. And I think over the years, that has changed. And I'm kind of excited about that, because now when I see people come in, this is 2023, people come in through the front door and it's, hi, how are you? What's your name? What are your interests? Are you currently licensed? Are you looking for a class? Can we give you a tour of the clubhouse? Can I take you up and show you our HF room and our museum? And so club members, I think, are opening up a little bit more and are a little more inviting to the new people, which is really exciting for me. I'm not a great ham radio guy. I get on sideband. I've loved to do soda summits. I would go with my son and we'd go backpacking and hammocking up on a summit somewhere. I'd take a little KX3 radio up there and I'd do contacts. Well, after about 3 years of that, my son decided that, hey, that's kind of cool. How do I get involved? So third generation is now licensed, Whiskey 7 Juliet Sierra Juliet, my son. And we spent one whole week doing Highway 101, activated about 31 parks in 7 days.
Oh, wow.
It was crazy. I mean, it was a lot of fun. We had just the best time doing it. So SOTA for me and POTA activations, some QRP radio. I've gotten into the digital radio side, FT8, enjoy that, but probably have not spent as much time with it as I'd like.
What's your radio setup at home?
Right now, I've got a Flex 6400 radio at home. I do have an ICOM 706. I also have a Yaesu 300, 2 meter and 440. Being part of the radio club, I kind of sat back and watched things for a number of years, not really getting too active. A couple of years ago, though, the gentleman that ran our membership site was really wanting to step back. He's in his 80s and asked for some help with that. So I got involved with our membership, which has been a great thing because membership helps get ballots out for re-election time, which we're in right now. They also do all of the annual renewal, also currently ongoing, and also our Salmon Run fundraiser. And from doing that, I got really interested about our club and our club's future. So much so that I've kind of pressed our board to say, how do we look forward 30 years from now? Will there be a radio club of Tacoma? And I think my concerns about that are every year we do annual renewals. And so come end of December, 1st of January, we're looking to see how many people we've lost. Currently, our membership's about 320 people. The concerning part is that our membership is quite old, and we actually have over 220 members that are 60 through, I want to say about 102.
Oh, wow.
So our membership is quite old. And how do we move forward in the future as our club ages out? And over the last 5 years, we've had 32 silent keys that we're aware of. Silent Key is, of course, a member, a ham radio community member that has passed away, and those are just the ones we know about. One of the things our club has as part of their bylaws is an ad hoc committee called Planning, and just recently we reinstituted a planning committee with Chairman Manny Adonis to take a look at the future of the club, the future of the clubhouse, where we meet and how we do that. Our clubhouse is beautiful. For any radio club to have a house, 80-foot tower, an HF room with multiple radios, and we can get a lot of people on the air. It's a beautiful place to have. Most clubs don't have that available.
Well, not to mention the museum that we're sitting in right now, right?
Absolutely. And to see the evolution of radio, as a matter of fact, down on the floor over there is an NC300. My grandfather's radio over on this side of the photograph, NC300, the Dream Machine. I've kind of decided, even as much as Grandpa is a pain, to go out. I bought an NC300 and the B&W 5100, which is his other piece of equipment. That was his transmitter, and try to rebuild that station. So for a club to have these things and people here with some experience to help you take rigs apart, put them back together, check equipment, show you what radio was versus what it is today. And it's ever evolving with so many aspects of radio that how do we draw people in? How do we show them how they can best use all their UHF, VHF capabilities, rather than I'm on a little Bofang and I'm done. It's how about WinLink, and how about VARA, and how about satellite communications, and how do we expand that? How do we teach that? Part of our looking forward is how do we capture the people that come in? How do we help them take the next steps, whether it be a class where we can all come together, find out what are your needs, maybe show them how to build J-pole antennas, or, how can the club be more useful for them to get the most out of their license. Again, looking forward to the future of the radio club, which is really on my heart, is club big enough, or do we need to make a place where we can get more people into a space that has rooms that we can do some teaching and trainings on Saturday rather than just coming in for coffee? That's great, and it's great to have that camaraderie. I think the early radio clubs, when I go back and look at pictures in the 30s and 40s and 50s, where you see a great big huge banquet room, you see rows of 40 tables in there, and you see them full, and these guys are in their suits and ties, their wives wearing nice dresses, their kids were all dressed up, and they were sitting down having a banquet together. The women's social clubs that were a part of the radio club, and the guys that got together for pinochle. I mean, it was a real community and a real family of people and a gathering that developed some deep bonds and ties. And today in radio, we don't have that. And of course, today in radio, everyone says, well, is ham radio really that important? I mean, look, man, I got my phone. I can do Echolink. And why do I need that? We could end up really needing something a whole lot more than the cell phone that won't work when the towers are down, when the power's down, you know? And so, so I've just enjoyed being a part of the club. I'm really enjoying trying to be a part of the club that says, let's be forward looking and let's see how we can take Radio Club of Tacoma, 116 years old, into the next century. I say when we do membership renewals, 320 right now, by December 31st, I'll probably only see about 240, 250 people that have actually renewed. And then we start the next year bringing in new members and starting all over again. And somehow we need to figure out, how do we keep those people captive to the club? How do we meet some needs for them that they keep drawing a value, you know, and wanting to be here? And I think that's the question for the future that has to be answered.
Very good. You've got a lot of good insight into that potential future for the club. Any standout memories of your radio past? Any things that can remember back in your golden days of ham radio that, you know, I think back to my novice years and the first time I worked at DX station, or any recollections of that sort of thing from your radio past?
You know, I feel so new in ham radio. I mean, it's been 9 years for me. That's nothing. You know, we got club members here that were members for over 60 years, you know, that aren't with us anymore, who could tell you the stories. For me, I've enjoyed some of the club members here that helped move me forward in ham radio. I remember the first year I came into the club, it was field day, and we are actually using generators and our clubhouse to hold field day. And we were sitting in the HF room with a number of guys, and somebody had just been working the radio, and they said, man, I need a break. And I had never been on radio. I'd never been on an HF radio, had never worked a foot pedal, had never worked a mic. My ears couldn't hear a call sign to save my soul. They went by so fast, it was like, you know, the bullet train in Japan or something. And I was sitting there and I didn't want to move into that seat. And Gary McAdams, one of our senior members here, looked at me and says, well, you're up. And he did it in such a way that I almost felt myself gravitating up out of my chair and moving over, sitting down in front of that radio, and I had not a clue what I was doing, you know. But I think that was a great memory for me, to just have somebody that was so reassuring. And then as I was sitting there making those first contacts, guys were helping me get the call signs down so I could log it properly, and they were helping me with all of the phonetics that I needed to do over the radio, and make sure I was putting my call sign out correctly and not using my own, but the clubs, and, you know, all the little things that just seem so overwhelming when you first start in ham radio. And about 3 years ago, so 6, 7 years into ham radio, and maybe it was right just before COVID hit, maybe, I want to work field day. Decided that my son and I were going to work field day out of our house. And so I've got my flex radio, and I'm working on the flex radio, and I set up a station in the kitchen about 10 feet from me. And we throw an antenna up my neighbor's cedar tree, and we get it all pulled in, and we get this Kenwood 570 SG all set up. And my son, his first time to ever do field day, his first time to really sit behind a mic and have to do calling CQ or pouncing on people. And I'm sitting in the other room and I'm doing my thing, and people are calling him and he's trying to call out and he can't get down. What was that guy's call? What did he say? What? I didn't get. And from the other room, I'm over there calling out the call signs for him. And it dawned on me, hold it. My ears must have gotten better because all of a sudden it's like everything slowed down. and all of that immediate energy and adrenaline that just has you like this on your first experiences had finally calmed down. My ears could hear differently, and even guys that didn't have a really strong signal, it was able to pick them up, and my son was just amazed. And I thought back, oh, that was the experience I had about 6 years earlier, and so that was a good time. And I think the 1 week long trip doing POTAs, enjoyed the dickens out of that because it was a great time to spend time with my son, but also activate a lot of parks.
Do you remember some of the parks you did?
If you start in Longview, Washington, and you take Highway 101 straight down to Seaside, there are 34 parks.
Wow.
We did 31 of them. Pull off on the show, and their parks are very interesting. So one park we pulled into had an old pit toilet over here, and across the parking lot over here it had a new bathroom, and the Highway 101 was up here, and this parking lot went straight down like this, and then it had a set of stairs that went down to the beach, and they called that a park. So couldn't even begin to tell you the names now because we just hit them so rapidly. One park in Longview that we're sitting at the entrance to the park, and we had a woman come to us and knock on our trailer door. So we were pulling a cargo trailer that we had all set up for sleeping and for working 2 stations. And all of a sudden we get this knock on the side door of this cargo trailer. We open it up, and here's this woman. She wants to know what we're doing. So we're explaining to her about the radio club and explaining about POTAs and POTA activity. And so she says, well, I do the local newspaper in the area here. Could I do a report on you guys? And I said, yeah, I'd be happy to do whatever you want. So we answered a number of questions for her. She took some photos. And I said, when you get done, will you please send that to us? And she said, sure, absolutely. I said, we'd like to include that in our club newsletter.
Did that end up in the newsletter?
It did. Yeah, it did end up in the newsletter. It was May of 22. It should have been in the newsletter right after that. So, I think that was another good time. I think our soda summits with my son, where we get up and enjoy hammocking, but also the times where we would climb summits in Las Vegas area. That's probably one of the craziest things to ever do in that kind of heat, to go find yourself a summit and assault it and sit there with radios in the heat of the day with 40-mile-an-hour winds blowing on top of the peaks. But ham radio's been good, and getting to be a part of a radio club that guys can teach you so much and help you along the way, and some of the stellar people that I've met here. I'm excited for the club. I'm really more excited to see what we can do in the future. And for me, I just want to keep learning. I think next thing on my bucket list, is going to be to work some satellites and maybe the International Space Station. So we'll see what comes.
Well, thanks a lot, Mike. I really appreciate your time today. We'll be seeing you around the club.
Hey, appreciate being here. Thanks for it.